your life. You got this. Go chase it. Live your life. Enlighten you. Let the light shine through. Light. Enlighten you. Just see it through.
Thank you so much for coming. You know, they said it was going to be hard to get a lot of people in here. I see a lot of people. Thank you. Thank you for dancing with us. Thank you for coming. And thank you for being a part of Enlighten You, EMU's mental health podcast for students. We appreciate that you're here. I'm Lolita Cummings, a professor of public relations, and I'm also co-host of Enlighten You with my co-host, Melissa Thrasher.
Hi, everybody.
We're going to get started, but before we do that, I felt like we needed to give you a little bit of background about the show first. Probably around in late 2019, as a public relations professor, I have an opportunity to get to know a lot of my students, and I noticed that the mental health of my students was on a decline. And so I started to brainstorm with a student of mine. Her name was Lexi, about what we could do, because doing nothing was simply not an option. And so we talked about a lot of different things, had some things that we thought we might do, and then March 2020 hit, and COVID was among us. And so we spent almost 2 years off campus because President Smith was keeping us safe. But when you came back, I noticed that your mental health was even worse. So Lexi and I got back together and said, what do we do? And she said, well, we watched a lot of podcasts when we were off. I was like, okay, podcasts, that's something we can do. I don't know a whole lot about it, but if you watch podcasts, we can meet you where we are. So we started brainstorming. And at that point, it was a little idea. It was probably a couple little raggedy microphones in a dusty little room, but we were determined that we were going to address a very real problem, the mental health crisis in American and college students. And so we knew there were some things that we had to do, and that was we had to have funding. So we put together a proposal. We knew we wanted students to be a part of it because we were addressing your issue, so you had to tell us what was wrong. We knew we needed a mental health professional because that person needed to guide you to the many, many resources that the university offers, and also give you some tips and strategies on what could make you better. So we started to do that. Along the way, Melissa came on board. And Melissa, I had little ideas. Melissa has big ideas. She's my big idea friend. And so it went from the little dusty microphones in the little dark room to what you see on Enlighten You today. And so we're grateful for that. And along the way, then Aisha, who you'll meet in a few minutes, Aisha Mustafa, our mental health professional, came on board. And so that's how Enlighten You came about. It is a mental health podcast for you. So we always want to hear from you about what you think. And we've had some successes. Late last year, we were given an award for the marketing program that we have put in place so that you know about it and students at other universities know about it. And then earlier this year, we were named the #1 mental health podcast in Michigan, something that we are very proud of and something that you all made possible. Thank you. Thank you. But then you told us you wanted some more. You didn't want, because normally in our podcast, we have Melissa and I, and then we have a mental health expert and we have a student, but you said you wanted to ask your own questions. And so that's why we're here today, so that you can step up to that microphone right there and ask our panel the questions that you have. But before we get started, nothing like this happens with just two people. We have an amazing team and we have amazing support. So I want to recognize Dr. Connie Rule-Smith, who is with us here today. And thank you so much for taking your time to do that. We also have Pam Cardell, who is in charge of the theater, so she allows us to be here. Greg Steiner from Athletics graciously loans us his studio every month so that we can record in there. Jason Willis is our videographer and our editor. He's right here in front. He puts all the cameras and he makes us look great. We have an amazing team of interns, Maisie Jones, Ellie Cartwright, and Gavin Millard, who you will see soon. He's going to play double duty, the intern, and he's going to be at the table. We also have from the Division of Communications, Darcy and Walter, who have supported us every step of the way. And if I've forgotten anyone, please forgive me, but know that you are very much appreciated. And finally, before we start, there's one person in this room who, if it were not for him, none of this would have happened. Early on in the process, when we were looking for funding and we got a lot of doors closed, someone said yes. At the time, I had no idea who it was, but I later learned that it was Dr. James Smith, EMU's president. And if it were not for his heart and his care for your mental health, none of us would be here. So Dr. Smith, would you please come and say a few words?
Well, first, Lolita, when you were talking about funding and how this all came together, I thought, I know I wrote those checks. I know those were coming from my account. And it's been a damn good investment, I might say. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Melissa and Lolita asked me if I would say a word or two about the podcast. I do watch. I actually get an email from one of them after each podcast concludes, and I do watch, but I want to do a few different things today. First of all, I want to recognize people. So if you are part of Family EMU, you work here, you're a student here, you're an alum, let's do a round of applause for our Team EMU folks. And we also have the Detroit Public Safety Academy here and the Academy for Business and Technology. All right. Detroit Public Safety Academy got ahead of me. If you're at the Safety Academy, let's hear a shout out. All right. Academy for Business and Technology, shout out. All right. Again, thank you all for being here. This is year 2 of doing this project. We are indeed very proud of the project in and of itself, but I think we're most proud of what Dr. Cummings said was truly who we are and what we are is about helping students. This exists not so that Lolita and Melissa can have something else to do. They have plenty to do in their life. But to help students talk through issues, examine issues, we bring in outside experts to talk about issues, and we know the importance of mental health and mental health to your succeeding. So we're going to continue to do this work. We're going to continue to focus on social situations, financial challenges, maybe the stress of being a college student, or the stress of being a high school student, or the stress of being a university president. I don't think that'll come up on the show. But we want to continue to do these, and it's so atypical that we do this with an audience. So I'm kind of excited just to be an audience member and sneak out here. So thank you all very much. Thank you for engaging with us today. I hope you will continue to watch. And I hope when the microphone opens, if you have a question, that you'll shoot that out and we'll get the best answers we have available. So ladies, thank you for having me.
Today's topic is on self-care and balancing your life, and I don't know how Gavin does that. So he's going to explain that to us today, because a lot of the things that he's doing and a lot of the situations that he's in may be those the same as what you're in, and so I think his story is going to help yours.
So to help us set our tone for today, I'm going to ask our mental health expert a question. I'm hoping that you can define self-care and wellness, because when I think about self-care, I'm thinking about, of course, listening to music, dancing, reading books, but there's much more to that, isn't it?
Yes, there is.
Yeah, can you explain and give us some examples?
I'm Aisha, pronouns she, her, hers. So with self-care, it's as basic as how do you care for yourself? And so often we have this concept of bubble baths and candles and relaxing. And what I like to think about is the 8 dimensions of wellness. You can find this on our website. So the acronym that I created today is I feel energized every second, positive, strong, and optimistic. So the I is intellectual, thinking about your curiosity for knowledge. The F is financial. So how do you save your money? How do you spend your money? How do you share your money, meaning donation? The E for energize is emotional. So how do you take care of your mental health? So this can be through medication, this can be through therapy. How do you regulate your emotions so you're not like this and you're more often like this? The next E is environmental. So thinking about your space. How do you tidy it up in a way that fits for you? How do you engage in sustainable practices? And then the S for spiritual. So thinking about your values, your morals, and how you show up in the world. And then the O is for Occupational, so your work-life balance, your career satisfaction. Are you satisfied with your major and the classes you're engaged with? And then P is for physical health, so looking at movement. I specifically don't say exercise because that can be a loaded thing of, well, that's not exercise. I only walked 5 miles to class on a hill, but rather than how do you move your body in ways that feel good, nutrition-wise, how do you fuel yourself? That could be with cultural foods, that could be foods that engage your energy, whatever that means for you. And the last one is S, which is social, which is, I think, a huge topic for college students, is how to build connections. And so one of the main things with mental wellness is trying to fight isolation. And this doesn't mean you had to have your best friends and have plans on Friday night, but more these like connections where you see people. And so today I saw people I know that maybe I don't remember their name, but I feel connected to them. Yesterday, I sat by the lake house with my kiddo who's 10 months old and had lunch. And it was amazing because even though I didn't know the people around me, I felt like we were sharing this experience together in like a wonderful 70-degree day.
Those are really good. Gavin, I'm going to ask the next question of you. And let me just say this. We get positive feedback from all of our guests, but for you, it was overwhelming. People love Gavin Miller. So thank you so much for coming. And I think you're perfect today because we talk about balancing life. I'm just going to read a little bit about some of what you do. And I'm sure I'm probably not even going to touch the surface, but you have 2 internships.
Yes.
One here for Enlighten You, and then the one also for the Division of Communications, right? You participate in forensics,
Yes.
but you don't just participate in forensics. You are a national champion in
Yes.
forensics, so which takes an incredible amount of time. You are about to graduate next month and have already accepted a grad position in grad school at Ball State University, where you will teach forensics, help with the forensics program, and teach speech communication.
Yes.
Right? And you're also in the Honors College.
Yes.
Right? So I do have a question after all of that.
After all of that.
How do you do all that? How do you fit all that in? And what's your life like?
I think the best way that I can manage my busy schedule is by surrounding myself with people that I love. I will say, coming to Eastern all the way from Ohio, which is like 3.5 hours away from where I live, I was welcomed by a great community on campus who were already ready to uplift me and support me. And especially having the forensics team, I had a lot of really great friends that I could immediately connect with. And I have a loving and incredible partner. So I'm a very social person, and even though I'm working all the time, I am constantly surrounded by the people that I love, and I know they love me. So that energy and what Aisha was speaking to, that connection helps boost my energy, and it creates this like aura of positivity that I can help push forward, because even when I know I'm having a hard day or I have a million things going on, I know that the people around me are here to support me, and they also know what I'm going through, and that makes such a huge difference, especially for college students.
That's good. I'm going to talk about people who support you for a second. Because I think that really does help with our mental health, right?
Yeah.
And I was out, just out there in the lobby talking to someone, and I looked up and I saw some familiar faces. I thought, no. And my son, who was supposed to be in Buffalo, New York, was here. And my daughter, who's supposed to be at Ford, is here. And the guy I'm dating, who's supposed to be in Cleveland, Ohio, is here. And my friends, who they're supposed to be at work and lounging around, and they're here. And it's that community that I think really helps to reduce stress and helps us to live our best life. So get yourself a community of people who care about you. Doesn't have to be family. Family is what you make it. Friends, whoever it is, people who know you, who get you, and who you can go to and say, I need some help, or just be with me and have some fun, because that makes a difference. That makes a difference, yeah.
Well, before we ask the audience to ask questions of our guests today, I do want to talk about life balance, because we all need it. Sometimes I just have to press the pause button so I can just reset, and sometimes watch mindless television. But we all need to incorporate work-life balance, life balance into our daily regimen. So Aisha, again, I'm hoping that you can talk about why is it good to center ourselves, make sure that we have life balance in our lives, and how should we feel when we're thinking about that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So with balance, for me, it's also like, what's the harmony? Like, even though I'm a therapist, I'm not sitting here zen every day. This morning I saw my therapist. It's been 2 weeks because my kiddo was sick, and it was exciting to see her. And afterwards, I felt very calm and ready to accomplish my day. And something I always talk about in my podcast and my class as well is I take medication to improve my mood and keep it stabilized. And so I always say therapists, they have therapists, and they engage in other points of wellness. And so with trying to find that balance is, for me, is what are my priorities. And so I had this little like logic model that talks about what is serving for me right now in this season. The season can be the semester, it can be this week, and that changes constantly. Different events in the world can change it. Your friend moves away, it changes like what are you needing to do. So maybe you felt you had a great support system, and you do, but then someone moved away, and so like, okay, I need to expand that. Or maybe you graduated and now you're thinking, okay, I still have the support here, but I need to find a club that allows me to be in it, since that was my college club. And so those are great things to think about when you're navigating the day-to-day life. And so with balance, it starts about prevention. And so it's so annoying, with a kid, as a kid, your parents like, go to bed. And now I'm like, when can I please go to bed? Like, I was just like, I wish I would have started this back in the day. And so setting yourself up for success, whatever that looks like for you. In the morning, I am in the slow phase of my life. And so I don't want to be rushed. And so sometimes I have a habit of things that don't feel good to me. And so rather than judging myself, we listen, we don't judge, of what are the things that make me feel good going into the rest of my day, and then trying to be gentle with myself if there's something that doesn't feel great. Like, rather than like, oh God, I have to eat right now, rather than like, let me have a meal and just feel calm while I'm doing it.
That's good. That's really good. What about, I'm going to ask a question, and then I want some of you to ask a question, because I want to hear from the high schoolers and I want to hear from the college students. So if someone can just step up to the microphone if you have a question. But what about stress? Because our students are about to go into final exam period, right? Which is incredibly stressful. How does stress affect us in our balance and our mental wellness, and what can we do about that?
Great question. So some stress is good. It can get us energized. So not always thinking if I have to avoid all stress. I like a smidge in my day of just like, ooh, just a little pep in my step. But it's when it becomes an issue where we're worrying excessively. Depression, so low mood, low energy. Maybe you're noticing you're eating more, eating less in ways that don't feel good to you. There's nothing wrong with eating more, but if that doesn't feel good to you, then that's something to address. Excessive sleeping, reduced sleeping, being really agitated where someone asks a question and you're just like incredibly irritable. These are signs that the stress is too much in your life and how to dial it back. And so ideally with final season is thinking about that. Like, I know whenever I'm stressed, my appetite is going to go down, but I need to eat, versus not eating and then afterwards I'm hangry, but I know that's going to happen every single time.
Great. We have a question. What's your question? What's your name?
My name is Jerry Hendricks.
And Jerry Hendricks, what's your question?
My question is, as a university student, we often have a lot going on in school and in life. And for some of us, when things are maybe getting tough, our first reaction isn't to seek help, is to sort of just double down on what you're doing and try to get it all done. I just was curious how you would describe, or maybe, what signs we should look for when we're maybe hitting a point where we should really proactively seek help and not just continue to double down. Like, are there signs that are maybe mental signs or even physical signs that we can look at and say, okay, maybe I should take a step back and prioritize my mental health?
That's a good, when do you know you're in trouble?
me.
That's a really good question, yeah. Thank you.
I think a couple of things. So having a support system around you that knows what your baseline is. Some people move through the world just like high energy frantic, and that's their baseline. And so if you know a friend, sometimes the lower energy is like, that's concerning. Sometimes people who are always at this level, the high energy can also be concerned. So all of a sudden you're sleeping 4 hours a night, but no one could tell because you're just high energy. And that's slipping into what's called mania or hypomania, where you have flight of ideas of, I could open this business, I could do this and this and this. And it's just like, but you're not resting. Loss of interest is a huge piece of depression. So if you notice, I don't care about this anymore, nothing matters. What are you going to usually do something on the weekend and all of a sudden you're just like, I don't know. that's an issue. And so some of these are common parts of life, but when does it keep going on? And having a support system who notices that, like, are you okay? And kind of, if you have a friend who ever asks, are you okay? Trying to remember, like, oh, wait, they noticed something, because sometimes we don't notice it ourselves, because this is our lives of just constantly going, and having that pause of like, hey, am I eating, or if not eating, am I making those 8 dimensions of wellness? And if not, rechecking and recalibrating.
That's good. I like when you said just thinking about, am I okay? I had a situation this morning where I mentioned earlier that Josh Lanning couldn't be here, and I was laying in bed, and I got a text, and it was from Josh saying that he wasn't able to come because I wasn't aware of the shooting at Beaumont. And I got up, and of course I'm calling everyone, trying to make plans. And while I'm showering, I realized I have a knot in my shoulder, like my shoulder hurts. And it reminded me of about 5 years ago when I was going through a period of great stress where, I had a handheld massage, and I'm doing everything to get this knot out on my shoulder. I'm like, that's stress. And I haven't had it for a long time, so it wasn't that familiar to me. But I think just checking in, and instead of having other people check in with you, which is great, but spending some time to check in with ourselves. Can we do that? Is there a system we can just, maybe set our alarms, just pay attention to your body because it's trying to tell you something?
I think building routines of this is what I do, because it can become so normal we're just quickly moving through the motions. So there's something called the body scan. Feel free to go to YouTube University and check it out. But pretty much what happens is it takes you through like a guided meditation where you start at your head and start to notice like what feels around you. Thinking out, scrunching your face up and like feeling that, because often we do those things, but we don't notice. And so I guide people through this in my classroom of noticing what's happening in your body, noticing are your ears attached to your shoulders, and then bringing it back. And while you're doing that, you're starting to calm down and notice you have tension in your body, because we often don't know it until there's a huge knot. And then we think back like, oh, actually, this started days ago. And sometimes they're called somatic events, is your body stress is showing up. So if you notice you have like tummy troubles before a test, that's related to stress. And so sometimes we're like, that's weird. And then we finish the test. We're like, oh, I feel great. Because your body was reacting to things that your mind had not yet caught up. So paying attention to those different things.
What about headaches?
Yep. Headaches. Tension headaches. Back pain. Like right now I'm experiencing lower back pain, and like it's going to be gone in, 50 minutes. And like, I just like, I know that. Like it took years to be like, oh, that's what's happening. Stomach troubles. I'm trying to think other things. Maybe wrist pain, tension, because you're just like constantly tense. And while we always say, well, get a massage, but what's happening is you have to relax your body and your mind and work through what's happening. And like stretches and all that kind of stuff also help, but you're holding the tension in your body and it needs to get released.
And Aisha, that's what we call mindful exercises, right? So breathing, isn't that a nice exercise
so breathing
that you
through
can do?
your nose is a great activity. So rather than your mouth, is causing you to slow down. There's also a technique called box breathing, which is where you're going to inhale on a beat, so up to 4, and then you're going to hold it, and then you exhale and hold it again, and then repeat. So you're creating this box, and that's a way to calm down your breathing, because we're often just like, okay, we just don't notice, and you're starting to pay attention to your breathing. And so while you're paying attention, it's really hard to focus on the other things, because we usually breathe just automatically. But imagine being like, okay, I'm doing, and then you calm down. And so repeating those type of things.
That's good. We have another question. Your name?
I'm Maisie.
Maisie, what's your question?
I'm wondering, when you do like a body scan like that and you're starting to feel some of those maybe like physical symptoms of stress or maybe burnout, what's like the best like first step to get into like fixing that and moving past it?
I think the first part is being gentle with yourself, and that not judging of, why do I have tension again? Why am I feeling like I can't eat again? Like this morning, like I was telling my therapist, this happens every time. And so all like the anxiety thoughts I'm having about my day, I tell her this is normal. And so while I'm experiencing the stress, I can normalize it and be like, okay, what are the things I'm going to do? Have my power song on my drive here, call my mom. These are part of my day. And I think knowing that this isn't getting rid of it right now, it's a process. And also once the stressful period ends, if it's something that's acute, is giving some time to reflect on what happened and like how can we help prevent it. And the goal for me is not like to prevent stress all the time. Like I said, I like a little boop boop to the day. Sometimes like create a little bit of stress, like, oh, should I leave a little late just to like feel the rush, And then usually the answer is no. And so thinking about how you approach life and like how do you need to do a 180 type of turn, or is it something very small that you can tweak?
Thank you. Kevin, I have a question for you. But before I ask that question, I want to come back to something you just said. You said very quickly, you're a therapist. And I think a lot of us think that therapists have it all together. So therapists don't have therapists. And I want to, if you would, talk about the benefits of therapy. Because so often we think there's something wrong with if we have a therapist, and we shouldn't have to have a therapist. And I want people to know that they're not alone and that it's okay.
Yeah, so I'll share a little bit of my story that we did at the STAR lecture mid-February. So I was the strong friend. Everyone came to me. And so in high school, I started to experience depression, anxiety, but I didn't know what it was at the time. And I was reflecting on the other day, and I was like, oh, I held a job 16 hours a week. I was in marching band, president of National Honor Society, vice president of Spanish Honor Society, helping out family. And I remember I was having panic attack at work, and I didn't know what was happening. I would just feel this intense need to run out the room. And so in the winter, I'd go outside because the calming of the coldness, or it was a restaurant, so I'd go into like the big freezer box. And so at the time, I didn't know this is a therapy technique to change the temperature can help. So sometimes increased sweating really quickly can help, or getting cold. And so during that time, I also was experiencing loss of interest, increased sleep where I had a sleep study. Nothing was wrong. I was just depressed and could sleep for 12 hours and incredibly tired. Experiencing disordered eating. And so trying to restrict my eating to become thinner. I was having suicidal ideation. And the reason I share that and share it with my students here, everywhere, is because I want folks to know that people like me, including being therapists, experience these things, and there's things I've dealt with on and off for 15 years, and like that's okay. And I went to therapy, got on meds, and it was helpful, but I didn't fix some of the root problems. I was very hard on myself. I didn't want anyone to know I was depressed. I remember in college, I shared with my friend I was depressed, and I was like, don't tell anyone. And now I'm like sharing in recorded spaces, and it's absolutely nothing now to share it, and still experiencing some of those issues in high school and college, even through the workforce some years ago. And that's why I go to therapy still. Not still, I will always be my therapist. We've been together for 8 years. She can't shake me if she wanted to, and so how to navigate those things. And I think I share that to be like, you're not the only one. And why I share it is because every time I talk about it, there's someone afterwards who's like, I didn't know like you were going through that. I'm going through that too. And like now I'm like, oh, I take meds, I do this and that. And like, I'm so excited about life and how it prepared me to be a great professor, a mom, and all those type of things.
Thank you so much for being so transparent and sharing it. I'm getting to you, but I want to go over your name, please.
Hi, I'm Maddie.
Maddie, what's your question?
So my question is, college is a really big period of big change and transformation for a lot of people. How do you suggest people manage like really big changes that they're going through?
Ooh, managing really big changes. Gavin, how do you? You're about to get to a really big change.
I'm so happy you asked. Hi, Maddie. I definitely experienced a lot of huge changes in college. Obviously, I moved out of state. I'm a first-generation student, so this environment is completely new for me. I think that if you embrace the chaos of college, because this is fundamentally a learning period, and you are never expected to be perfect. I have had Lolita as a professor for a while, and I will say, like, even though like the assignments are hard and PR is hard, you're always like, it doesn't need to be perfect. You can make some mistakes. EMU specifically also allows you a lot of opportunities to stumble, but then also get back up. So embracing that mindset of, I'm not going to be perfect today, and that's fine. I'm going to show up in the best way that I can. Especially for me, growing into a college student and then becoming a grad student, I always feel like I'm not doing a good job. And then people will come up to me and be like, you're so cool. I'll be like, but then at the same time, I feel like such an imposter. But embracing that self-love and embracing the idea that you are doing a lot better than you think. And at the same time, those big changes are going to happen and we are going to be okay with being imperfect. I think that's a really important mindset to have.
Absolutely. Thank you. Did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I think we all go through big changes. And so being gentle with yourself and reminding yourself that even folks who you think have it together, your faculty, your staff that you're around, they don't. Like, I'm teaching the same class last year this time I did, but I've never taught it with the 10-month-old. I've never taught it a second time. And then I'm judging how I did it last time. And so we see these things and we think, well, that person has it together, but we're constantly learning. And that goes back to the intellectual curiosity of having that growth mindset that you're able to change and not being fixed in this moment of like, I am bad because I didn't do X.
Thank you. Your name?
Hi, my name's Lamar, and you all mentioned that during high periods of stress that it's good to find a support system, whether it be your friends or your family. But on the receiving end, if someone reaches out to you, what different strategies would you recommend to support your friend?
That's good. How can we support others? Good.
You're looking at me.
Yeah, you know I'm looking at you.
So I think asking, are you okay? And some people may not be ready to share that. And I'm a big proponent of saying, can I check in on you? Because I get like anxious. Again, therapists have anxiety of like, well, should I check in with them? But I don't need bothering them. I don't want to do this. And just like asking permission to do that. And most people, I think everyone in my life is like, yeah, that'd be nice. Because if I don't check in, I'm thinking, well, I don't want to bother them, so I don't want to check in. And the person's like, I just told you this huge traumatic thing and you never said something again. And so I think being present, being near folks, even if it's like, hey, I'm walking over to the student center, do you want to attend that with me? And that can just create more opportunities to be present if someone feels like they're opening up.
That's good.
And Aisha, don't you think too, sometimes people just want to feel heard?
Yeah,
So being
exactly.
a listening ear, you don't necessarily have to give advice, but just let them know that you're there to listen. I think that helps and goes a long way too.
a great point of asking, do you want advice or do you want a listening ear? Because I go into solutions, like if you're like, I don't want this class, I'm like, let's talk to an advisor. Like, do you need to change your major? And it's just like, someone's just like, I'm just stressed. It's Tuesday. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so asking, what did they need? And it helps them think about, what is it actually do I need? And I see people who are like, okay, actually, you know what? I just want to rant right now. I'm like, okay, cool.
Yeah, when you said that, my daughter looked at me and raised her eyebrow because I go into mommy mode when someone presents me with a problem. I want to fix it, and I think there's a great temptation for many of us to do that. But you're right, some people just want you to listen and just be there. So that's one thing that I'm working on. Thank you, Lamar.
Yeah, thank you.
Gavin, what do you do? What do you do when your life's out of balance?
So my life can get out of balance really quickly. I feel like as college students, we take on a lot of different things at the same time. And furthermore, we are encouraged to. Not only are we trying to get a degree, but we're trying to build up a resume. We're trying to get work experience. We're trying to be in extracurriculars. We're trying to build something. And I think oftentimes that stack can topple over really quickly. The first thing that I do is I have a little mantra that I like to say sometimes. If you don't make time for your body will make time for you. So I'll be working on assignments and be like, oh, I'm really overwhelmed right now. And then I realize that cognitively, I will just not be able to do it right now. Like, there is just no way. I have learned the cues of my body and my mind to be like, okay, and there's the hard stop. We are going to take a step back. We are going to talk to like my current partner or some friends and really have that reset, because your body is cyclical. We are intrinsically cyclical beings. We need to reset that cycle and then start again, because it's often our mindset that makes the biggest difference.
That's really good.
Mhm.
That's good.
I like that
What's your
too.
name?
Frank,
Frank. What's your question, Frank?
I was wondering, so kind of similar to college being a life transition, but specifically about work-life balance for people who are graduating and they're dealing with applying to grad school or trying to figure out their careers. What recommendations would you have for taking care of mental health and balancing both your school life and your regular life or like your personal life?
That's good. Gavin, you just went through
Yeah.
it.
I
What do you
just
have?
went through that. Oh yeah, I am like fresh out the grad school applications. What I would say is making sure that you let your loved ones know what's happening in your life. I had another friend who I work a weekend job as well at a cafe, and she because why not? And she let me know that she had sat down with her partner and her loved ones and just said, right now I'm going through a lot, and I just want to let you know that sometimes I may be irritable, I may be having a bad day, but I want you to know that it's not you. My life is just a bit hectic. And another thing that I do sometimes is I tend to see the end result, but I don't see the steps to get there. So I'll be like, oh my gosh, I need to finish this graduate school application. I need to work on a speech for forensics. I need to finish this huge assignment. I need to see Melissa in the office. I need to make sure I'm posting on time for Enlighten You. And then I realize that it's a lot less scary if it's just one thing at a time. What is the first thing that I can do to make myself feel a bit better? Like, you know what I can do? I can send an email. And then from there, I can start to develop a lessening feeling of anxiety because I'm knocking tiny things down at a time. And sometimes it's really hard to not get overwhelmed, but making sure that you take a step back and realize that you have a lot more time than you think, and also believing that you can do it, because I think sometimes as college students, we feel like we just can't. We're facing an impossible battle, but we can. Like, so many people have done it before, and you can do it again. I think that's really important to remember.
Thank you for the encouragement. Aisha, you have
Yeah,
anything?
to add to that, a couple of things. So imagine you have glass balls and rubber balls. So you're juggling all of them. Ideally, we keep the glass balls up. Although if they shatter, we can replace them. And the rubber balls, sometimes I'm figuring out, what am I chucking because it's going to come back up. And so when you think about your priorities in the season of life, if you have all of a sudden 10 applications to get done, something has to change, and ideally you figure out what's going to drop, because something will drop and you ideally want to make that choice. And again, being gentle with yourself. On the podcast, something I always say is, it's just Tuesday. And sometimes we think like, oh my God, if I don't do this application, if I don't get the right school, I'm never getting a job. And then this would be a degree wasted, and my family and my friends. And it's like, it's just Tuesday. You haven't even read what the prompt is yet. Like, it's just like making that small thing of maybe today we have the capacity to see what the prompt is and when is it due. The other thing is what's called body doubling. And so doing work with somebody else. And so this is a great way you don't even have to talk. It could be like, hey, can we go do work for an hour, sitting outside the lake house, going to the student center, and, going to the library. And so you feel connected, even though you're not talking. You may not even be really good friends, but it can reduce the stress of like, someone else is with me in this environment.
That's called body doubling?
Yeah, it's
that's
lovely. There's like apps you can go on and someone be like, hey, I want a body double. Like, we both clean our rooms at the same time.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's
it's
a
great.
good idea.
She teaches me so much. Thank
Every
you.
day.
What's your name?
My name is Kara.
Hi, Kara. What's your question?
My question is, what do you do in times of low mental health to stay motivated and like do all the tasks that you need to do? Because I find when you're going through like periods of, hard time, it's hard to get that motivation.
What do you do during your...
We recently talked about this. Yeah, I think on the STAR lecture. I think it's tough when you're in that like space where you're just like dragging everything. I call it like walking through mud. Really hurts. Is how to be kind with yourself. And if you have the energy, setting a timer for, sometimes my timer is 1 minute, 3 minutes of what can I cut off or cut out. And so rather than making a list of all the things you have to do, which is really overwhelming, just like, these are the things I need to do. So think of yourself as someone working the ER. So you need to triage and make quick decisions rather than like, okay, I have this, but this, like just trying to take a step forward. And with taking a step forward, you often get a little more momentum. That may be in that moment, that may be in 3 months, and just being like, this is okay, this is what I'm doing today. Sometimes that means I got dressed. Rather than, oh, I got dressed, I brushed my teeth, I do all these things. There's a lot of things we should be doing for ourselves that are great, but taking the smallest step. Because I've been there where depression is just horrible. Like, I can eat, but I'm not eating like foods that fuel my body. But my goal is I have to eat, and just being gentle with that.
Did you want to add something? You look like you do.
Yeah, another big thing that I really want to echo what Aisha was saying. I think we also need to recognize that we are often our own worst enemy. And when we are talking to ourselves in that mean voice, and I said this on the episode that I was on, it is often not ourselves. It is often someone in your life that has said something hurtful to you, and that voice echoes in your head. And then taking a step back and realizing that's not me. I would never speak to myself like that. And then also realizing that our energy ebbs and flows, and humans are not meant to run at a 100% capacity all the time. There will be times where you can't do as much, and sometimes just getting dressed is a big win, and you can't let yourself take that win away from you by looking at everything else and being so negative. It's really important to remember that things are going to happen and sometimes things aren't, and that's okay.
That's good. That's good. Who do we have next?
My name is William, and I just want to know, like, what do you do when, like, you feel like all the odds are, like, against you? You're almost at the finish line of graduating, and like you guys mentioned, like, the support system is there. Like, me and my mom, we are, like, close. We talk, like, 1,000 times a day. Like, she's steady reminding me, like, God didn't bring you this far to, make you give up now. Like, what do you do? Like, you trying to exercise, you trying to do, like, other things to, like, get your mind off of things, but it's just not seeming to work.
My big two things is to breathe. And I know this sounds so annoying as a therapist. Like, did you try breathing today, actually? But it's something to calm yourself, putting your hand to your chest and realizing, like, you're alive right now, and that movement is you existing. The other thing is rest. Often when we're busy, like, we have so many things to do. We need to get it done, and resting. So what does this look like? This can be sleeping. This can be closing your eyes and dreaming. There's this grind culture that used to be me all the time. Like I told you about high school, it did not stop in college. I learned how to crack the code to see what the classes were before it was registration time. I wasn't a coder. I just figured out the URL, because that was the level I was at. And I'm so far from that now, and realizing, like, it's okay to rest and be gentle. And it's really hard when all your peers are doing something different. Oh, their internship turned into the job. Well, I haven't started looking. Oh, like, comparison is the thief of joy. Yes. And so I think my big things are breathing and resting. The other day I was feeling super overwhelmed, and I was at an event and took off my jacket, so I had like a short sleeve shirt on, and I put myself against the tile, and it was cold, and that felt super calming. Or sitting on the floor just for a moment to, like, feel different surface and remind yourself, like, they're different, not just sitting in a chair or a couch, but like, oh, I'm feeling that my back's supported by this, like, huge building.
Yeah. And one of the things that I do when I'm feeling overwhelmed, like I have a lot of things to do and some of them may not get done or some of them they may not get done well, is I'm visual. I'll make a list. I'll make a list of everything that I have to do. And then with every point on that list, I'll say, okay, am I able to do this, or do I need some help? And if I need some help, then there's another line that's like, who can help me? Because a lot of times we forget to reach out to someone for help. We forget to reach out to share our story with someone, not realizing that we are surrounded by people who really do care about us and can help us with those things. And so that works for me.
And when making that list, finding a home for where that task goes, like, often we make these huge lists and we're like, oh, we're going to get it done all today. And then we don't. And then we feel bad about ourselves versus I have an hour block. What are the things I can do during that time? And okay, well, I said I'm going to do this. How much time is it going to take? And that practice helps you realize these things take more time than they will always take more time than you think. And then that helps you adapt. So when you do it again, you have put in that buffer because you want your mind to feel the wins of I accomplished something. So give yourself the most grace to set yourself up for success.
Thank you. Thank you. What's your name?
Hello, my name is Jillian.
Hi, Jillian. What's your question?
My question is about self-esteem. Around this time of year, it gets very stressful with final grades and finding jobs, and it gets very easy to doubt yourself. So I was wondering what ways you can improve your self-esteem.
That's a really good question. I'm going to ask Gavin, because I've heard you tell a story about one time when you didn't do as well with your forensics, and I think it might help Jillian in this situation.
Yeah, so hi, Jillian. One time I was at a tournament and I am used to doing pretty well, but I was going through a really hard time because this was just after I won a national tournament, and I felt this huge weight and pressure on myself because I was like, at this point now, I think everyone just wants to see me fail, and the only way I can go is down. And I let those voices kind of get to me. And at this really important tournament, I completely kind of fell on my face a little bit, and I didn't get any good results. And girl, I cried. I cried in a conference room. And then I just realized, like, I can't even go to the award ceremony. And funny thing was, another competitor came up to me and was like, yeah, like, where were you? And I was like, oh, because they thought I wasn't even there. And then something clicked. No one's paying attention to you in that kind of way. No one is out to watch you fail as much as you think. And sometimes it is so easy to take our failures and kind of weigh them against our wins to see which side comes out on top. But humans don't work like that. I learned that after I failed, nothing really changed, and I was okay. I was able to embrace that failure and my feelings of low self-esteem, which I still struggle with, but then I realized that I have a community that loves me and that I am fundamentally worth a lot as just a human being. And something I like to do this with my partner, and I like to do it with my friends. I think, would you think that about me? If you saw someone who is really struggling, being like, I just hate myself, like, I'm stupid, I can't do these, I can't take this test, I can't do this, I'm gonna fail. And I was like, well, if I was saying that, what would you say? And then they would be like, well, girl, you're great. And that is something that I would impart to you. Think about what your friends would say, and then realize that that critic isn't what everyone else around you is thinking.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just a housekeeping thing. The last person in line, let that be the last person in line. This goes so fast. So stay, because we want to get to all of your questions, but if no one else can get in line. What's your name?
My name's Hannah, and I was kind of wondering, with like, we have habits, some of them good, some of them bad. For the ones that are bad, how can you, like, break the bad habits and permanently break it so you don't end up back in the trigger of the endless cycle of bad habits?
Yeah. So I'm always going to go back to being gentle with yourself, that in a perfect world, I'll say I don't have bad habits. I have habits that don't serve me in the season I'm in. So maybe you scroll on social media in the morning, night, at the stoplight, in the bathroom, all the times, not talking about myself or anything. And I'm recognizing, like, I just keep refreshing. I'm looking for a dopamine hit, but, like, I'm wasting time that is not actually helping me. Making really small goals for yourself. So we often want to be like, I'm going to New Year, I'm not going to do any social media any day. But first off is, what are you replacing it with? So if you're replacing a habit that doesn't serve you, you have to replace it with something that's really helpful for you. So maybe you're reading a news article, maybe you're texting a friend, or something that can, like, replace what's negative. And the other part is making it really tiny of what you want to do. So maybe is, I set a timer for social media. Maybe is, I only go on it at this point at night. For me, like, staying off of Facebook, like the 12 to 4 a.m., we had an episode about a year ago around this time about the effects of social media. Like, that's helpful for me. And there's times where I go, like, creating some resistance between the habits. So I'll delete social media on my phone. I can do it on my computer, but, like, that is a whole other level that I'm not going to do. So think about how you engage with that habit, and just being gentle that it may come back into your life. And that's not a horrible thing, depending what the habit could be.
Thank you. What's your name?
Hi, I'm Gray.
Hi, Gray.
I'm kind of going to change the topic a little bit, but I'm interested in pursuing higher education, as working as an educator. And I was wondering what, like, as a professor, how to balance that, keeping a standard in your classroom while also acknowledging some of those, like, key signs of students struggling. And how to balance them both, like having respect for your students, but also having respect for yourself as an educator.
That's a really good question. And
YouTube.
A lot of my students are here, and I'm glad you brought that up, because I don't know that I always get that right. Because what I tell my students is, I balance, and what I struggle with is knowing, I want you to know that I care about you, because I truly do, but I also feel like I have this responsibility to you to educate you and to give to you what you came here for. And so I think Aisha does a better job at it than I do sometimes. I really do. So what I ask students to do is come talk to me, right? Because sometimes it's hard for me to know who's really struggling and needs some help and who's just kind of lollygagging along. But if I know you really need the help, I will go to bat for you no matter what. But I also balance the whole fairness. I mean, how do I treat someone who's just lollygagging as opposed to someone, who's working so hard and who's achieving and who's making it work. But if this person needs some help, I want to give them some help. But if I need you to tell me. And I say this to students, whether you're mine or not, if you're in trouble, let me know. And I will, I see Calvin McFarland back there, and I've emailed him before because, we submit care reports for you all when we know that you're in trouble. And those are the things that we want to do. We want to make sure that you get the help that you need. But unless you tell me, I don't know. And I need to know.
It's a great point. So you're mentioning wanting to go into higher ed.
Yeah, like I definitely have this interest. Journalism is a hard field. So I've started kind of looking into maybe teaching those skills as opposed to really pursuing them as like a
So we
professional.
should connect after. So I work in higher ed. I'm in leadership and counseling. I work in the master's program, higher ed student affairs, and also the PhD program for education leadership. And I think it's a tough balance of wanting to support your students, and particularly if there's certain populations that you're like, I'm first gen, I want to make sure I'm supporting them in the way I was or wasn't. And like that's why I always go back to having a therapist, where my therapist is like, Aisha, like what's showing up for you when you are like, I'm taking you under my wing. And also I think not seeing it as a bad thing, I think it's something to be cognizant of, but like it's how you show up. I think about my educators, and I had a professor, Dr. Patricia Gurin, my first semester, how old am I, 18 years ago, that was amazing. And we invited us to her house and built that faculty-student relationship. We're a mentor to this day. I'm planning to see her tomorrow. She's in her 90s. And I meet people who are like, oh, you're one of Pat's babies from like, my age to 60, 70. And that's who I want to be. And also knowing that there's times where I definitely overdo it because I can overcommit it, and how to dial that back and building that relationship with students is great. And knowing that you don't have to do it alone. There are all the resources in addition to our counseling programs, the Disability Resource Center, RecIM, that you can touch base with, and building those relationships so you don't feel like, because I'll feel like I'm abandoning someone if I say like go to them or go to this other person, but this is my network and I want to add to that.
Got it. Well, thank you guys so much.
I just want to add, because you mentioned journalism, and journalism was my undergrad. I want to tell you, don't give up too soon. And if you want to chat after this, we can, because journalism is such a great industry. There are a lot of different avenues, and so don't give up too soon.
Thank
but
you so
I love
much.
higher education.
I'm going to steal them, though.
We're going to fight over you.
You're in high demand, Gray. What's your name?
Hi, my name's Dominic.
Hi, Dominic.
So like a lot of my peers, I'm a full-time student here. I'm working 2 jobs just to kind of make ends meet and get the best that I can done. While I have an amazing group of friends, they've been there for me through so much. I have an amazing partner. I have an amazing family. I still can sometimes struggle with communicating to them when I'm feeling down or when I'm feeling anxious. And it's almost sometimes like I can't communicate to myself when I feel like that. So I was just kind of seeing if you guys had any tips of how to balance that and how to reach out to people when I'm feeling overwhelmed or anything.
That's really good. I don't have a solution for you, but I feel like I'm a kindred spirit, because sometimes I feel the exact same way that you do. It's almost like if I say to myself, I'm struggling, then I'm saying to myself, I'm a failure. So I don't even admit it to myself. And if I don't admit it to myself, how can I share it with someone else? So what can we do?
Yeah, great question. I think getting attuned to yourself, easier said than done. So again, I'm always going to say therapy, and that may not be accessible for folks. So the RecIM, they also have wellness coaches, which is not therapy, but a way to meet with other students and staff to get that support. So I think, let's see here. There's a couple of tools online. So if you ever see like the emojis of like different faces, and sometimes thinking, with yourself, like, oh, which one seems like me? And I'm forgetting the name of the wheel. Feelings wheel, but there's like, I don't know, 50, 70 different words, and they'll be categorized into this means angry. Because often we have like 5 words we choose from, but actually it's like, no, I'm not angry, I'm irritable. And so trying to I'll sit with that and be like, where am I on this? And like I say, to share this, to be like, I'm a therapist who sometimes like, what am I feeling right now? And, getting the practice of, sometimes I don't know what I'm feeling, but will tell someone like, hey, I'm a little on edge, and that kind of means like, can I get some space and let's check in later? And then that gives me time to process it, like knowing that something's just off, and like you don't always have the language, and being gentle with that.
Okay, thank you. Hi, what's your name?
Hi, my name is Fatima, and my question is about procrastination and overthinking. As a student who's trying to work on her degree and also have business goals on the side, how do I avoid getting overwhelmed or overthinking or just anxiety altogether?
Overwhelmed, overthinking, anxiety,
I struggle with
procrastination.
overthinking. Yeah.
She hit a lot. She walked down a lot of streets with that one.
I'll start with procrastination, that it is normal. Faculty members, speaking for myself, procrastinate a lot, and sometimes it's because I'm afraid of making a mistake. Sometimes because I have too many tasks. And procrastination also for some folks is a sign of neurodivergency, and so they may put themselves in that situation. Like I said, the stress for me, like, woo, like I'm gonna wait a little bit until to do something because I get a little like hype of like I gotta finish the deadline. It's, and some people think they thrive on that, and maybe they do, maybe they don't. And so figuring out how do you protect your time. So finding blocks of time when you do work is really helpful versus I'll do work sometime today, but knowing maybe Tuesdays and Thursdays you do work, and they can be 45 minutes. I think there's often this concept of I have to lock myself in a room and do 4 hours. So that's one of my tips for the procrastination, is just making space, mental space and physical space for whatever it is you need to do in your life.
I would add too, I'm very deadline oriented. So sometimes if I'm on a deadline, knowing that I've done all that I could and gave whatever I'm working on the best, I feel okay submitting it and just walking away from it, because deadlines are everything in my industry. And so you can't really sit on things too long. But just knowing, hey, I've done the best that I could and here you go. I feel good with that at the end.
Thank you so much. What's your name?
My name is Davion. I have a question on mental health as a high schooler.
You're a high schooler?
Yes. I go to Detroit Public Safety Academy, 11th grader, by the way. But my question is, how did y'all get past like any mental barriers or like any problems to get where y'all at now? Because as a high schooler, I know it's very vital. Like mental health is vital to us. Yeah, that was a question I want to know. Like
so how do you get past mental barriers?
Yeah, like how do y'all get past that to get where y'all at now, to talk to us about it, basically?
For me, I push through, and sometimes I will share with my friends and with my children that I'm having difficulty with something. And I think it's important to surround yourself with a hype team. You don't need Flavor Flav, but someone who is going to pump you up and to remind you that whatever it is that you're trying to do, that you can do it. And tell you who you have in your life who may be able to help, or what technology you have. For example, maybe it's YouTube, or maybe it's some other form of social media. But surrounding yourself with people who you can confide in and who can pour back into you and give you the confidence that you need. That helps me.
I love that Lolita said that, because I'm all for hype team, community, all that stuff, but also accepting too that if you do need to speak to a mental therapist, I've learned so much from Aisha, and I've had therapists along the way, and I think it's okay. They're there to help us. So I think that's a nice resource if you need it too.
Thank you.
To add to that, for me, with the getting through, I think challenging, like in the past, I wanted to be done with that mental barrier, and now it's a part of my story. Like I've built a whole thing on like, this is who I am, in the summer I'm part of TED Talk and Ypsilanti, sharing my story, because it's something who I am. Like I have anxiety and I take medication, I do different things. And sometimes my anxiety serves me really well, where I overthink everything and have a plan to the T, and other times it's paralyzing. And so I don't necessarily want to get through it, just knowing how do I maneuver it and how do I use that to my advantage. Advantage is a strong word. And also with having, depression, suicidal ideation in the past, disordered eating, that helps me really be really in tune with who I am, of like, what am I eating? Okay, not being weird about, oh, I have a wedding coming up, I shouldn't do certain things, because it's so much of our culture that we always have to push through. Oh, it's very normal to be like, run a 5K on Thanksgiving to prepare for food, and like knowing I don't want to do that stuff anymore. And so I'm not upset about the past I've had, because it makes me a better person.
Thank you.
Thank you. One final question from the students. What's your name?
Hello, my name is Jace Carter, and I'm a senior at Detroit Public Safety Academy. And my question is, how do you become more emotionally aware, and how do you cope with your emotions?
Ooh, how do you become emotionally aware and cope with your? I'm gonna give it to both of you.
Do you want me to start or you?
I can start. So I think that's a great question and something I care a lot about. I have used our CAPS resources on campus. Every student, I think, is enrolled at least 2 classes, gets 12 sessions of free therapy, and that renews. And then I chose to continue that, and I went to cognitive behavioral therapy at Eastern. And a big part of learning that like emotional awareness is taking a step back and really analyzing what you do, but also approaching it with objectivity and like neutrality. You know what I mean? Like not being like, oh, like I think I do this all the time. Like I get really mad. I get like this, but understanding that I am not perfect and there are things that I can change, and realizing that working on that doesn't make you a bad person, and it doesn't make you like the scum of the earth. But what it does is it highlights an opportunity for growth. Something that I also really took to heart is my therapist told me, instead of having those really bad like emotional like dips, trying to make those dips just little what do you call them? Yeah, like little puddles. And then understanding that growth and progress is not linear. There are going to be days where you really feel aligned with your emotions, but there are also going to be days, especially as students, when we have a lot going on, that you just feel like you are plummeting, and realizing that that cycle is normal, but also approaching yourself with kindness and inviting yourself to really understand what those feelings are, because often it could be like the same anxious thought or the same feeling like occurring again and again and again. And if you approach your feelings with that neutral gaze, like I'm curious as to what's happening right now, you'll start to see those patterns. And then from there, you can really grow from that and really feel happier afterwards.
Aisha. Yeah. And when you, at the end of this, we're wrapping up. So can you, they're a high schooler, so they don't have these services until they come to Eastern, which they're coming, right? But then provide the services at Eastern.
Absolutely. So I think with getting into your emotions, it is a long process. Literally every day I'm like, oh, that thing I do is related to trauma. So with my experience of trauma, I have hyper independence. So this means I'm moving a queen size bed up 2 floors because I don't want to wait for anyone. This has happened. I could just wait, but it's like, no, I have to make sure I'm always relying on myself. So on paper, this looks amazing, but I had to learn, like, you're not alone. You actually don't have to do these things. There's a term called like sitting in your feelings. And sometimes we don't have the emotional space to do that. We have things to be doing. And so knowing if you're sitting in your feelings, if you're going to therapy, there's always a time and place for that. And sometimes that's not now, because I use the metaphor, imagine you have a junk closet and opening it out, it's just everything falls out. It's too much. And sometimes that needs to be closed until we're ready to parse through that. So if you're talking with someone, of talking about things that are more easy accessible to your mind versus going into the deep things. And so with being in high school, looking at your school counselor, they're a great free resource. Also, they can connect you with folks in the community who may take insurance, may not, and can help you find accessible care. And with the Eastern Michigan, we have a plethora of therapy resources. So the counseling and psychological services CAPS that's available to students, 12 sessions an academic year. And then once you have used those sessions, they help connect you in the community. So they built relationship with different partners, so they can do a warm handoff. They can have a conversation ideally with that new counselor. They also have free groups, 2 of them coming out. So for folks who are in the LGBTQIA community, and then folks who are of color who want to have support system with folks who are through the same experiences. There's also the Community Behavioral Health Clinic that is staffed by our psych master students and PhD students. And then there is the counseling clinic. This is in the College of Ed, so folks who are going to go into college counseling or school counseling, and that's free for the community. So that's free for students, Sliding scale, very free, low cost for the community, and the psych clinic is low cost. I think it's like $10 a session. And then there's also things like the Disability Resource Center. So talking to folks that help coach you on, okay, how do you engage with procrastination? How do you manage your ADHD or autism? How do you talk to your faculty about these issues? The Rec IM has coaching wellness, also movement classes, taking class or walking to the lake house and back. Tinker, I had to plug Tinker. So Tinker is EMU's therapy dog through Pause for the Cause. And so Tinker was on our episode that aired this year, October 15th. And she's for folks to come by and pet her. So she's in Marshall on Mondays and Thursdays, 12:30 to 2, and Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 11:30 and 1. And so it's a great way to just pet a dog and the co-regulation of people just being happy. And then on Wednesdays, I take my kiddo there, and who's 10 months old, and people are like, it's a dog, it's a baby. And it's just great because I see people like, oh, how's her daycare going? And I'm like, it's good, thank you. And then I'm like, oh, how was that project last week? And so sometimes you don't have to talk. So it's a way to build connection. And that itself is part of your wellness. So it's not therapy, but just the stroking. And then if you're the chosen one that day, she'll give you a paw. And then it's just like, oh, thank you. And then I can see people just regulate. And so I think those are all great ways to take care of yourself, depending what stage of life you're in.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I think Melissa's going to wrap us up.
Oh my gosh, yeah. So they beat me to the punch. Yeah. I was just going to say, can you give our panelists a round of applause? But you guys beat me to the punch. Well, that was a very enlightening discussion. Of course, you and I learn so much every time we get around this table and talk. So I want to thank all of you for participating today. As we wrap up, I do want all of you to remember a number. It's 988. So if you find yourself in need, this is a suicide and crisis lifeline where you can call, chat, text this lifeline and get the help that you may need, or you might want to share it with someone you know that needs help. So just remember to ask for help. And lastly, if you did not sign up for LBC credit, so I'm speaking to our EMU students, please see one of our fabulous interns to sign up for LBC credit. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your week.